All right, my friends, greetings. Hey there, Alpha King. M, Tim Dog, Master Panda, Lee Underhill. Let's see who else we got. Regina Brown, Moses, Nikki J, Haunted Girl, and LOA Blue. Greetings, my friends. Good to see you all. It's been about 3 weeks, and I have to apologize for being so sparse here, but got a lot going on, as I'm sure most of you all are aware of. Thanks for coming out. I know it was very little notice, but I did give you guys a little heads up on the community tab. I got 2 stories for you today. I'm not going to spend too much time dilly-dallying, but I got one that you might have heard before about werewolves, but then there's another one that has some really interesting, couple of really interesting connections, and it's a new one that you haven't heard before. This is an email I got from a dreamer named Amanda, and that one it's pretty long. It's about twice as long as the other one. We're going to start with the one that might be a little familiar because there's some elements there that I want to discuss and just get you in the mood for a werewolf story, because this second one is pretty serious. Let's see. A jar of pickles. Hello there, my friend. Who gives a Nino Brown? Hello and goodbye. All right. And thanks for the kind words, Nikki J. All right. So, Marco, what's up? We're going to get into this first story, werewolf encounter, sort of. It's a bit of a mystery, but what I want you guys to think about while we're reading this story, what's up, Brad, is what questions and comments you have about the story. And if you do have I'm doing this sort of for the podcast, for some material for the podcast, but I want you guys to type in hashtag, all caps, hashtag podcast, if you have a comment or question regarding either of these stories, because the first one, which I already did for the YouTube, I'm re-recording it now for the podcast. The second one, I'm going to read you the story, but that story's not going on to the podcast itself because I have I'm going to be interviewing the young lady who experienced it for the podcast. So this is just so that you guys can get an idea of the story and give me your questions and comments that I can ask her when I do the interview, because I've started doing these podcast interview style conversations online, but not live during YouTube, just because certain things can pop up that I might not want getting out there. I might not want everybody, hearing about, or maybe they don't want to have everybody reacting live to what they're saying. So it's kind of a happy medium. I'm reading the email to you guys, and then I'll be doing the interview, and you'll hear the interview on the podcast at a later time when the podcast finally launches, because as you guys know, I'm building up my stockpile of episodes and stuff. Hey there, Jesse. What is up, my friend? Good to see you. Yeah, Brad, you and I, we have that thing for werewolves. This is really the second story. You guys make sure you stick around for the second story, because this thing is nuts. And I can't wait to interview Amanda, whenever I can get her into the schedule. How's the sound? Let me know if my level is okay. If I need to turn that up or anything. I don't want anybody getting mad at me halfway through the story saying I'm too quiet. If it's too quiet now, let me know now before I start the stories. All right. Hey there, Swamp Dweller. What's up, man? Good to see you. All right. So I'm hearing sound is good. Let's see here. I'm going to start recording. All right. So first story comes from Rafi. Remember, questions, comments. Hey there, Slumber. What's up, my friend? If you have questions or comments, hashtag podcast, all caps, and then let me know in the chat what your question or comment is so that I can address it and add that to the podcast whenever that comes around. All right. Yeah, Swamp Dweller, I hope you are feeling better. I haven't seen your Twitter lately, but yeah, I know you were dealing with some stuff. All right, my friends, story time, engage. Maybe I'll put a little bit of creepy music on for this one. There we go. Hello, Mr.X. My name is Ravi. The story I have for you took place a few years ago in the village of Tanjay, the Philippines. I used to be a huge fan of werewolf movies and TV shows, but I have to say, once you've encountered the real thing, it really changes your view of what you consider cool. I had spent the afternoon at my girlfriend's house but wasn't able to get a ride home, so I ended up having to make my way back on foot with nothing to protect myself but a small flashlight. It was getting late, so there were a few passers-by on the road every so often, but after a while I was pretty much all alone. I was just passing by an I was just passing by. Goodness, alright. I'm gonna get into this, guys. Trust me, I'll get into it. Wasn't expecting to do a stream today. Alright. I was just passing by an electric utility building. Goodness gracious. I was just passing by an electric utility building called a Vico station when I felt eyes on me. I was still within the glow of the light from the station, but the further I got from it, the more danger I could sense in the air. Out of nowhere, a grizzled voice rang out. "You must be a brave man, walking the night alone." The man's silhouette came into view maybe 20 meters ahead of me, and I could immediately feel the deadly intent in his eyes. He walked toward me with a frightening intensity. Gonna let this plane pass by real quick. They always seem to pick the moments when I'm trying to read stories to have their flybys. I don't know if it's Thunderbirds or what. Alright, here we go. I don't know if you guys could even hear that, but it's pretty loud on my end. He walked towards me with a frightening intensity, his arms flailing back and forth, all while his piercing gaze remained locked on me. I shined my light towards his face, but it was the strangest thing. All I could make out was a blur. Looking at his face was like trying to make out the image of a foggy mirror or a mirage. As he got closer to me, I realized he smelled like he just came from a slaughterhouse. Iron, musk, and blood assaulted my nostrils. I also noticed he had no shoes on. When I realized he was trying to block my path, I decided to turn and make a break for the Vico station's gate. I knew there would be an armed security guard there, so it was my only option to get away from this crazy person. They need them at times at the station to keep people from breaking in or interfering with the power grid. The guard at the door perked up and came outside when he saw me running. The crazy guy stopped the chase, standing a few meters away as I got to the building. He still stared at me from outside the perimeter gate with a fury I could not begin to understand, his face seeming to get even more blurry and hard to make out as time went on. Relieved, I began telling the guard what had just happened, when my train of thought was interrupted by a sudden gunshot. I dropped to the ground in a panic, looking behind me to see what the guard was firing at. A shadowy figure was running full steam towards us. It was low to the ground like a dog running on 4 legs. His shots appeared to be hitting the thing, but there was no effect. It only stopped when the other guards or workers started coming out of the building to see what was going on. With no signs of the man or that weird bulletproof creature, I eventually had to continue my journey home. As I passed the area where the dog was, or the dog thing rather, whatever it was, I saw not a single trace of blood despite the fact that I was sure it was hit at least once. I saw not a single trace of blood despite the fact that I was sure it was hit at least once. Further on down the road, I felt that evil intent on my back once again. I reluctantly turned around and saw something that I knew I'd never forget. A thin, dog-like creature with glowing red eyes. A thin, dog-like creature with glowing red eyes. Its mangy coat almost looked like that of a hyena, with a ridge of dark hair along its back. It was leaning forward on its front legs as if ready to attack. Looking into its fiery eyes, I felt like my world was spinning. It was all extremely wrong. I also felt a profound confusion, as if this was a thing that shouldn't have existed. I ran for my life, shouting as loud as I could to try to get attention of any people in the area. I fumbled with my phone, trying to get to call the police. as I ran. I couldn't bring myself to look back, but the growling let me know it was still right behind me. I kept on with my eyes dead ahead until I reached my family home and busted through the front door. I tried telling my aunt what happened, and she just laughed at me. The next day, there was a lot of bad news. 2 people were found dead in my village. One was a motorcyclist on the side of the road. Discovered on the side of the road. And the other was a pregnant woman at a public hospital. The woman's case was extremely bizarre. She died trying to escape from a window. She appeared to have been mauled to death by some kind of animal, but authorities couldn't understand how that could happen in the middle of a hospital. How could an animal have made it all the way to her room undetected? The police also issued a reminder to beware of a man who was wanted for multiple murders but had escaped a few days earlier. They described the man as having a very thin build, and that he mysteriously disappeared, leaving only his clothing behind. So there's one story, and definitely a few things to talk about with that one. I'll get into my thoughts on it real quick, since I have some of them written down. And then in the meantime, if you guys have any questions or thoughts or anything you'd like to add about this particular story, go ahead and write in the comment section with the hashtag podcast, so I can see it and add that into the discussion. So first of all, one thing I want you to remember about this story is the fact that he was saying that the face of the man was blurry. He couldn't make it out. He couldn't make any details out to explain or not explain. Couldn't make any of the details out of the man's face. And I found that when I first read this story, I found that very interesting, and like it's pretty hard to explain. But what you're going to hear in the story from Amanda, which is going to be coming up as an interview on the podcast, she describes a similar situation, and basically that being the muscles underneath someone's face moving and twitching so quickly that it appeared to blur their face. So we're gonna get into that. I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but you're gonna see a lot about that. You're gonna see some stuff in this next story. But before I go into that one, I'm gonna look something up, because I know I have some other stories from the Philippines, and I feel like if I feel like I could probably add those Philippine stories to this one and make them all one a more sizable experience for that podcast episode. Let's see. Checking out the chat. Jeffrey Lane, what is up, my friend? Entropic Lizards, Quasar, Bobby, Laura, JD, Night Reverse, Spiritual Warrior, Dead Countess. Hello there, my friends. Marco Ramos asks, I wonder why entities at times are faceless. That's a good question. I wonder about that too, because a lot of people, if they either they can't see the face at all, or they can see where the face should be, but they're not able to see it. Yeah, I wonder why that's such a common thread among these stories. Jessica D, hello there, my friend. Good to see you. Okay, I'm gonna take a second to see if I could find this Aswang story, and I know there's one in here somewhere. Aswang. Okay. So we could probably make this almost like a double header, werewolf and a vampire, a Filipino vampire story at the same time. Hope you guys don't mind. You'll get a third story, an extra story. Before we get to that second werewolf story, I'm going to do this Filipino Aswang story, since it lines up with the theme. Jessica, hello there, my friend, Jessica Bullock. JD Beth was asking, hey guys, just wondering, do any of y'all know any good podcasts that has stories like these? The podcast that I was on recently, the Confessionals podcast, starring Tony Merkel, good friend of mine recently. I was on episode 118, and if you haven't heard of the Confessionals podcast, it was going on that podcast that made me realize, wait a minute, this is a really interesting format, and I feel like I could do this. And that's why I've been, that's kind of what made me pull the trigger on starting a podcast. So pretty soon, I'm going to be starting the Dreamer Cast, which is going to be all about us. It's going to be about the dreamers, and it's going to be about the stories that I've told and will tell. I'm going to be doing interviews and stuff like that with actual dreamers that call me. And so when you send me an email, basically from now on, if you send me an email and it's a really great story, I will actually say, hey, let's do a phone interview. So you can call in on Skype or Discord or Hangouts or even on the phone, like a regular phone call, and we can conduct an interview there, and that'll be a part of the podcast. So when I get into that, you'll be able to hear similar stories like these and interviews, and us kind of discussing with actual people who had the experiences, and that's something I've been really enjoying. But until then, make sure you check out the Confessionals podcast as well, because Tony was a major encouraging force for making me feel like, hey, you know what, I can do the podcast, and if I put the work into it. So, definitely check out the Confessionals if you like this type of stuff. He's got all kinds of really interesting, a huge backlog of stories, and trust me, you'll have plenty of interesting stuff to get to. Rayshawn Daniels, hello there, my friend. Stranger Stories, good to see you, my friend. Let's see. Yeah, definitely check out the Confessionals. All right, so who wants to hear? Hold on, let me see. Who wants to hear a Filipino vampire story this time? Gonna bring that in. Hope that wasn't too loud for you guys. I'm just trying to give myself a marker for on my recording. All right, let's do this. Story mode, engage. So this next story comes from Joshua, another one from the Philippines, which is what connects these two. Unlike what appeared to be a sort of werewolf type creature in the previous one, this one is almost like the Filipino equivalent of a vampire. It's called an aswang. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that with this story from Joshua. Hello, Mr. X. My name is Josh. I'm a 24-year-old male living in the Philippines. The story I wanted to share with you isn't exactly my own, but was told to me by my father some years ago. The events that transpired were occurring when I was only a year old. Back then, my family lived in a pretty rural area where everyone knew everyone else. We also had a ton of relatives nearby, living in the same group of neighborhoods. One day, my dad was outside in the backyard watering plants. He was minding his own business when he suddenly noticed an unusually large black bird perched in an old tree. The branches of that tree hung low, so my dad got a much better look at the bird than I'm sure he wanted to. He didn't think anything of it at first, but he soon realized that the bird's eyes were a deep red. Not glowing or anything like that, but more like they were severely bloodshot. He said that the bird sat there, staring at him, returning my father's ponderous gaze just as intently as he had watched it. Dad was unsettled, but soon got back to his work, got done watering, and went inside. A few hours later, it was night. Dad went back outside to do some more chores in the yard. Now, the way our houses were set up, there was sort of an alleyway with a fence that separated our house from the one next door. My dad was finishing up when he caught a glimpse of something small scurrying across the alleyway, making a splash in a puddle of water. Since we had a pet turtle at the time, a red-eared slider, my dad thought that maybe the turtle got out of its tank somehow and was trying to run off. He walked over to the dark alley and, upon closer inspection, found a culprit. Oddly, what he found there was a large crab of some kind. This wasn't a common sight in my area. The crab the size of a dinner plate. A crab the size of a dinner plate. The strangest part was that in the low light coming from the back of our house, my dad could see the crab's eyes. They were that same deep, blood-red color of the blackbird he'd seen earlier. The crab stopped in his tracks and stared him down. The same intense glare from his encounter with the large bird. He quickly dropped what he was doing and went back inside the house, admittedly creeped out by yet another bizarre animal sighting. The next day, Dad went to speak to the neighborhood elders about what he'd seen. They told him it was an aswang. So if you didn't know, stories of aswang are all over the Philippines, especially out in rural areas. They're basically the Philippines' equivalent to vampires of Western folklore in terms of mythology. They're said to be shapeshifters who have a taste for human and animal entrails, but the most sought-after delicacy is the flesh of an unborn child. The legends have it that the aswang would crawl around on rooftops at night, searching for pregnant women. When it found one, it would settle above the expectant mother as she slept, winding its freakishly long, prehensile tongue into her room by some opening in the roof, and suck the baby from her very womb. As it happened, my mother was pregnant with my little sister at the time. One of the elders claimed he knew the aswang had paid a visit to our house. I don't know how he knew this information, but he insisted that this particular aswang was not trying to eat my sister. Rather, he said, it simply liked being around pregnant women because it finds their aroma to be somehow intoxicating. My dad said it was all still creepy. He was a bit relieved that he wasn't dealing with a creature that wanted to harm his family. My sister was born without any problems, and we never heard from that creature again as far as I know. Thanks for listening. So, on the topic of aswangs, I did a little bit of research and found some information that I found pertinent to this story. So it's said that some of these creatures can look like normal humans during the day, and unlike vampires, they can walk in the light without trouble. The thing that piqued my interest is the fact that they can also blend in perfectly with humans during the day, meaning they can interact and have friendships and conversations with people. And it's also said that, and I know this is sort of, folklore and local legend and mythology, but it's said that these creatures typically don't harm the people that are close to them during their daily life. So, even though they're overtaken by this intense need to feed on flesh at night, they'll usually reportedly travel to distances far away from their home village to feed, and therefore avoid suspicion or the possibility of blindly harming their own acquaintances. So, with that being said, I sort of felt like the elder that mysteriously knew that the Aswang didn't want to eat Josh's sister, but just rather wanted, he enjoyed being around pregnant women because of the intoxicating presence of their, I don't know if it's their aroma, their odor, or what have you. Maybe he can sense the hormones or something. I feel like that elder might have actually been the Aswang in question, if there is even such a thing. Just a very interesting thing to think about. So let's see here. Here we go. All right. Gonna catch up with the chat, and then we're going into this new story that I guarantee you guys have never heard before. Here we go. All right, what do we got? Chelly Bean. Hey, Mr. X, you're always here just when I need cheering up. Well, consider yourself cheered, my friend. Looney Tunes, hey there, my friend. Let's see who else we got here. All right, all right. Sia Wolf, what's up, my friend? Tariko, hello there. Brian's World, what is up? See, Nikki J, you and I, we're on the same page there. Yep. And then you said that too. I didn't see that because I was reading. Elegant Minerals, hello there, my friend. Yeah, could be pheromones too. That's a good point. And let's see here. All right, so holy crap, that's pretty good number of y'all there. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you are not subscribed already. Thanks for all being here. That's a lot more people than I was expecting on a Sunday afternoon with like 30 minutes notice that I put out there. Hey there, Gothic Rose. Rosillo, how do you pronounce that name? Araceli. You have to spell that out phonetically for me. Yeah, hit the like button, share, follow me, Twitter, whatever. If you want a Mr. X Dreams t-shirt or a mug like this one, or this one has my face on the other side too, go to teespring.com, check that out. Okay, the last pronunciation was say Araceli. I think that's what I said last. I don't know about the podcast called Compulsions. You mean Confessionals? The Confessionals podcast. That's the one I was talking about earlier. All right, Roland Lafleur. What is up, my friend? All right, so we'll get into this last story number 3. And now that there are more of you than there normally are, that's nice. We saw the Filipino werewolf again, an oldie but a goodie. We saw the Filipino vampire, but now we're going to see something different, something new you guys haven't seen before. And let me fill up my water real quick. So, being in South Florida, I know a lot of Dominican people, I know a lot of Haitian people, and the Haitian people have this kind of legend, this myth called Loup-garou, it's called, which is basically a werewolf, a wolf man in some ways. And this, I find it very interesting, and I'm going to talk about this later, but I find it very interesting that to hear a story coming from the Dominican Republic, which is on the same island as Haiti, about another creature that is remarkably similar. I mean, remarkably. All right, and we're going to talk about the similarities a little bit and a few other things. Moo Moo says, I was a werewolf, but I got better. You're going to have to explain that one, my friend. Victoria, hello there, my friend. This is basically one of the more interesting cryptid stories that I've heard. There's a build up to it, but let me tell you all this. I'm going to start recording. So this story comes from Amanda, a Canadian citizen that went on vacation, on holiday, if you will, over in the Dominican Republic. And I want you all to pay close attention to this story, because there's certain little elements that I didn't notice were important until my second time going through the story and reading it again. There's certain things that happen in their interactions with people that tell you what the societal and the cultural and the social interactions with these creatures, these cryptids, how that can affect, a local population. So pay very close attention, almost like you're watching a movie and thinking about what the setup is and what's going on around these characters, because I'm going to go over it. If you miss certain things, you might miss, or you might catch things that I missed. So make sure you type in #podcast if there's something you notice that I miss, or if you have a question or something like that, and let me know. All right. So without further ado, we're going to get into this one. Story mode, engage. No music on this one. We're going in straight up voice only, because I want you guys to have your full attention on what's going on. Just had to get a little sip of water first. Dear Mr. X, I'm 33 now with 2 children of my own, and because of my experience in Cuba, I never tell them that monsters don't exist, because I have first-hand knowledge that they do. Correction, that actually is supposed to be Dominican Republic. I'll start over. I don't know how I got that typo in there. Dear Mr. X, I'm 33 now with 2 children of my own, and because of my experience in the Dominican Republic, I never tell them that monsters don't exist, because I have first-hand knowledge that they do. My name is Amanda, by the way. I was just graduating college for electrocardiology. A friend I had made in school, I'll call her Z, had decided with me that we should go to the Dominican Republic, as we deserved some downtime after all the studying and hard work and crazy hospital internships we were finishing up. We left the day after graduation. When we got to the resort, I truly can't remember what part of Dominican Republic it was in, but I'm sure you can look it up. It was called the Don Juan. We were so excited. I also learned a second lesson. Never book anything less than 5 stars in the Dominican Republic, because the experience at the stay was less than spectacular. Despite that, we were determined to make the best of the vacation. We checked into the room, put on our bikinis, and wiped on some tanning oil, and headed to the bar on the beach for some well-deserved snacks, sun, and relaxation. Almost immediately, we were surrounded by beach vendors selling necklaces, hair braiding, and other overpriced souvenirs. I'd had enough after about 10 minutes, and I downed my drink, grabbed Z's hand. Well, that's a tongue twister. I'd had enough after about 10 minutes. I downed my drink, grabbed Z's hand, and dragged her into the water, saying, "They can't get us here." We were enjoying the crystal clear water, and watching the colorful fish swim around us when two cute local guys came up on surfboards, asking us if we wanted to learn. Immediately we started giggling and said simultaneously, "Sure." We introduced ourselves, and so did they. Their names were Maximus and Andrew. Max looked similar to A.C. Slater from Saved by the Bell, dimples and all. And Andrew was slimmer, but he had a six-pack and strong jaw, intense honey-brown eyes. So naturally, Z was all over him. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship, so I wasn't looking for anything, not even a fling. We spent the rest of the day until dinner time, just before dark, attempting to stay up, standing on the boards, and flirting with the two cute guys. They have shark nets out in the water, but they don't wear... Okay, that's weird. All right. They have shark nets... I'm sorry. They have shark nets. That's so weird. They have shark nets out in the water, but they don't recommend swimming past dark. So we said goodnight, and the guys told us they'd be back after lunch the next day. I am by no means a picky eater, but the food at the resort buffet was god-awful. We had booked a few day excursions through a vacation company, and most of them stopped for our lunch after. This is really weird. I didn't really write this one out, guys. This is kind of the email format itself, so you gotta bear with me. We had booked a few day excursions through a vacation company, and most stopped for lunch outside the resort. The food was amazing there, so we tended to overeat while we were out, even ordering to-go meals from restaurants we ate at. By day 6 of our 10-day trip, we couldn't stomach the resort food anymore at all. So when Max and Andrew invited us for dinner at a restaurant less than a block away from the resort, we gladly accepted. We had been spending every day with these guys. They were genuinely fun and great guys. Total jokers. And they were never rude either, and they only spoke English in front of us. By the way, we're Canadian. To be safe, we made sure when they picked us up at the front desk that we left our names and theirs with the concierge in case we didn't come back. After all, we were two girls on vacation, going out with locals. Yeah, I know it's stupid, but we were both in our early 20s and we thought we were being as safe as we could be. Dinner that night was amazing. The two men were treated like royalty. I was thinking they must have big ties in the community, or maybe even that they were possibly drug dealers. None of the wait staff would look at Z or myself or even talk to us. Didn't know why at the time. I figured it was probably because we were clearly not from the Dominican Republic. I later found out that was not the case. We had such an excellent time at dinner that we agreed to lunch and a tour the next day from the guys. We got to see a beautiful jungle and local towns and villages, not to mention dancing, great food, and music. They dropped us off again at the end of the night. Max tried to kiss me and I politely turned it into a hug. I explained I wasn't looking for a fling. While Z tried to make a move on Andrew, who clearly wasn't interested in her. The next day, Z was so hungover that she never left the room, which left me alone, basically, with just my book and the beach. I wasn't a huge drinker back then. After lunch, which consisted of a chocolate bar and about 4 strawberry daiquiris, I was fully relaxed and laying on my beach chair face down, reading, when sand was kicked on my feet. I figured it was a kid running by, and didn't move as I was engrossed in my book. Then, right in my ear, I heard the words, whispered, "Hello, heartbreaker." I jumped and fell off the beach chair to look up and see Andrew standing over me with the widest grin humanly possible and holding his hand out to me. As soon as I grabbed it, he burst out laughing, which caused me to laugh too. As it turned out, Max was very embarrassed and actually afraid to face me. I felt bad about that at the time, but I figured who hasn't broken a couple hearts? I hung out with Andrew swimming and surfing, which by the way I got pretty decent at by that time. I would bring him resort drinks and we were drinking and chatting all afternoon. We got along really well, not to mention he was seriously cute. So around the time I was ready to go for dinner, and starving, I didn't really want to say goodbye since we were enjoying our one-on-one together. When he asked me if I'd like to go on a real date with him, I figured why not? I'd be by myself here anyway, so I agreed. We met up again 2 hours later. I had showered and gotten dressed, and I remember I was wearing a pretty club top with a little too much cleavage showing, and tight jean shorts. That's a little weird line for me to read, honestly. I, of course, had asked Z if she wanted to join me, but she was still not feeling up to eating. So I just brought her a plate of buffet food before I left. Andrew picked me up at the front desk again, and to my surprise, he had brought his motorcycle. All I remember was that it looked like a Harley-type bike, but it was gold and ruby red. He told me since we were going on a real date that he would pay for everything and that it was going to be super romantic. I remember thinking to myself, wow, what an actual gentleman. We drove for over a half hour, with me holding on to him for dear life, until we got to a cliffside small town. We'd been there previously for dinner a few days ago. We had been there for dinner a few days beforehand. This time, we went to a small little restaurant just off the main street. The front was covered in vines, but you could hear a live band playing inside. He said it was the nicest place around. Best lobsters ever, apparently. We went in and had dinner and danced, polishing off a bottle of wine between us. He asked if I'd like to have a bonfire on a secluded part of the beach and watch the last rays of the sun set. Of course I said yes. I was having such a wonderful time, really enjoyed it with him. But looking back, I remember, besides him, basically no one acknowledged my presence or even made eye contact with me. I'm going to highlight that for later. He got a bottle of wine to go and 2 glasses. We walked through the town, and I remember people were locking up their houses as we passed. One lady in particular I remember seeing was saying what sounded like a prayer. She was almost crying. I remember thinking that she was so sad that she must have lost a loved one. It was very strange. I remember thinking she looked to be so sad she must have lost a loved one or something. It was very strange. We walked to the hillside area where I could see the beach below. It was just a little alcove with an extremely steep path down. I remember he said, "Only one way down, one way out." He offered his hand to help me, and I took it, headed down the steep path ahead towards the beach. Once we gathered twigs and beach debris, we were able to start a fire. We sat down just as the sun disappeared, and we watched the fire from then on. He poured us each a drink, and we clinked glasses. He leaned in and kissed me. I kissed him back. He tasted like copper, which was gross. And I thought to myself, great job. Now you're stuck here and he's expecting to make out. I needed time to come up with an excuse to leave, so I pulled away and told him I really had to pee and that I'd be back. When I looked at him in the firelight, his features looked a little strange. His nose seemed thicker, and his forehead was suddenly more pronounced. He told me to go behind the rocks. I headed that way, and we were about 40 feet apart when I turned to look back at him. The side of his face looked like it was different, changing. His head looked like it was getting longer somehow. I started to freak out, thinking that he drugged me and maybe he was going to try to take advantage of me. When I went around behind the rocks, I watched him. His features were transforming right in front of my eyes. He turned towards me, and then he leaned backwards, almost writhing, in the sand. His face was moving so quickly, the muscles under his skin seemed to be blurring it. I remember clearly, he said out loud, "Where's my little heartbreaker?" and laughed a deep, inhuman, guttural laugh. Terror does not describe the feeling that I had in that moment. Time stopped. A cold fear was in my veins. Every hair on my body was standing up. He was mutating. I'm telling you, Mr. X, I'm literally crying as I recount this right now. The best way I could describe it is that he was mutating. I heard a voice. "Run, damn it! Run!" I looked over and saw a man standing in the middle of the water, maybe 20 feet away, off the beach. He was dressed in some sort of uniform and yelling at me and pointing to the path up the cliff. I bolted, ran so fast, right past Andrew, or what had been Andrew, as it was now making god-awful popping noises and wet crunches. I remember looking at it and not being able to make it out, because it was almost blurry, now in all fours, getting up. Just a continuously moving mass, twice the size of what it had been. I caught a glimpse of light reflecting from its eyes. I ran for my life as fast as I could, running and climbing up the steep hillside, thinking that at any second that thing would catch me, but I still refused to look back. I got to the top of the hill and ran for the nearest house. I was pounding on the door, screaming for help. The door swung open and I fell inside, scrambling. A man and his wife and daughter had let me in and shut the door, locking it behind me. I screamed for them to call the police. "You have to help me. Monster! Monster!" The man grabbed my mouth and put his finger to his own, telling me to be quiet. I figured that out quickly and shut up, crying silently with tears streaming down my face when the woman brought me some water. They stayed up with me at their table all night, and no one said a word until the sun came up. I flinched at every small sound, thinking that at any minute the thing would come crashing through the door. The man said to me, "You have no idea how lucky you are. Today, you have cheated death." I asked him what that thing was. Does everyone know what it is? Does everyone know what he is? Why didn't anyone say anything or warn me? The woman answered, "Because you are either one of them or you are their food." What was he? What do you mean they? There's more than one? I asked. "Wolves," the man replied. I don't think I stopped crying until I was on the plane going home. To this day, I'll never forget what Andrew looks like. I have pictures of him, but for the safety reasons, I won't show them. Nor will I ever forget that man that told me to run that night. I don't know who or what he was, but I think he might have been my guardian angel. I will never go back to the Dominican Republic again, and I'll never forget the face of the man who was no longer a man. So that's my true story, Mr. X. I still have nightmares and panic attacks, sometimes, but I have a personal protection, a therapy dog, and he helps. I'd be lying, though, if I said it didn't affect my life, because it has in more ways I cared to say. I'd be lying if I said it didn't affect my life, because it has in more ways than I cared to say. I pray if you go on vacation in the DR, just stick to the resorts. Sincerely, Amanda. So, that was a crazy story. Looks like I'm missing some the chat looks kind of lit right now. What did I miss? I hope you guys are paying attention during that story, because there's some interesting things going on throughout. Jelly Bean said going in raw. That's what I wanted to say, but I held my tongue. Straight in, no chaser. Oh yeah. So let's see here. I'm gonna catch up with the chat real quick. And yeah, so Nikki J said, "I bet it has something to do with the two guys. It's always the cute ones." I mean, if you think about it, it's a pretty good strategy. You know, if you're on a beach, there's a lot of tourists there. There's a lot of pretty girls, whatever. and you know that they're not going to want, they're going to try to escape the crowds and the vendors and all the people selling things. They're going to try to escape that by going to the out into the water. So you develop a cool hobby, being able to surf, something that a lot of people would want to do, and you kind of just hang out there. They're almost like sharks in a way. They're hanging out there waiting for somebody to wander into their territory that they can then say, hey, you want to get out of here? You want to get away from these people? Hop on the surfboard. I'll teach you how to surf. You know, that's easily, I see their game there. I see it. It's pretty clever. But to think that those people are actually some kind of sinister creature is something else. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed these things, but I'm going to go through these. All right. You notice throughout the time, whenever the girls are out with these two guys, the guys are treated very well. They're treated like royalty. They're waited on hand and foot. But no one will look at or acknowledge the girls. Obviously, it seems to me that the locals are well aware of what these two individuals are, what they are, who they are. The fact that if you cross them, you could end up dead. And they probably don't want to look at the girls because they're like, yeah, these poor girls, they're not going to stand a chance. And I feel guilty dealing with these people at all, but I got to look out for myself and my family, and I got to cater to them. So, you know, sad day for these two girls. And what I gathered from the story was that when Max, the AC Slater looking possible werewolf, he was rejected. Basically, romantically, his romantic advances on Amanda were rejected, and he was very embarrassed. So, what does his homeboy do? His homeboy comes back and courts this girl who broke his friend's heart, lulls her into a sense of security, and then scares the dickens out of her. Possibly, he might have even been planning to hurt her, because if you think about it, the first thing he said to her after that incident was, "Hello, heartbreaker," meaning that, you know, he could have been referring to the fact that she broke Max's heart, so now she's going to be messed up. And yeah, it got a little bit more obvious as time went on, and she was describing how nobody would look at her in the eyes. People were locking up their doors whenever they went by them. And one of the things I wanted to mention was when she says that his face was moving so quickly. It was like she said his face was moving so quickly. It was like the muscles under his skin were moving really fast, like they were twitching or vibrating or shifting around so fast that it was actually blurring his image, not only on his face but on his whole body. And that sort of reached back to the Filipino werewolf story. And as this man was starting to, these are two totally different, unrelated people, unrelated incidents, different parts of the world, and I find it very interesting that was the case. That element, and this is the only two times I've ever seen a blurry face mentioned in the context of a werewolf encounter or any kind of cryptid encounter that I can think of. Really, really interesting, guys, and I hope you enjoyed those stories. So let me see. I'm gonna go into this chat and see if there's anything else that I missed, because I feel like there are. All right. Oh my goodness. Sadness says, I got to hug a sheep today. It's been a good day. That sounds amazing. Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Arlene, hello there, my friend. Finally made it to another payment live stream? What do you mean by that? Okay, yeah, you were wondering about how payment got in there too. I mean, you can pay me if you want, but I didn't get that. Rayshawn Daniel says, y'all whack for not catching me up. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, Rayshawn? Okay. Oh, I see. You asked for people to catch you up on what was going on. Man, it is raining like crazy out here. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I might as well put on some rain sounds in the meantime. Closing this live stream out pretty soon. Yeah, this was an interesting story, and I can't wait to talk to Amanda directly and see what she has to say in a conversational live format, because this stuff is really fascinating to me. Let's see here. What do we got? Yeah, I've been seeing a few orders being placed on the Teespring store, the Mr.X Dreams apparel, mugs and stuff like that. Even the stickers, leggings, even a couple people. And I need you guys to make sure if you buy something and you wear it, you rock it, representing the dreamers out there. Two things. Number one, send me a picture of you rocking the Dreamer merchandise so that I can add it to my slideshow. And number two, make sure if you're going to rock my designs that you do so in the proper manner. You need to be on point at all times. Be brave. Be compassionate. Help others. Do things to make yourself an example for other people to see. Make people feel inspired when they see you, especially when you're wearing my gear, because that's the thing that I like to hear. That's what makes me happy, when people are doing right and they're doing the best they can, being the best people they can, helping each other, and just representing the best of humanity out in the world. That's the type of people that I want wearing my stuff. If you're not going to behave that way, then maybe skip the Dreamer merchandise, because you don't need it. And if you can't afford it, then hey, y'all know that I don't have anything against that. I'm not making demands or anything, but if you do pick it up, just make sure you represent the values of the Dreamers when you're out there rocking the gear. I hope you guys liked I don't know how many of you haven't seen this before, my animation, the background stuff that I do for story time. I'm still very proud of it, and I haven't had a chance to show it off in a couple of weeks. So, hope you guys have been enjoying that. I hope that you guys have been having a great day, great afternoon, whatever time it is in your area. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me, and just letting you guys are really gracious in all the crazy schedule or non-schedule that I have going on. I'm never consistent with YouTube. Hopefully, when I start the Dreamercast, I expect that to be fully consistent, once a week uploads, and I'm gonna drop a whole bunch of episodes off the bat in the very beginning, so you guys can listen to those. I'm going to start pushing it a lot harder. And I'm also going to be starting my website. Still working on the design for that, because it's a lot more of a process than I thought it was, than it would be. And you know, I'm very much appreciate you guys for supporting everything that I'm doing, and not just dropping off the map because I'm not doing the same exact thing that I've been doing every single time. And that's why I try to do these stories. Not every single thing is going to be all about the podcast. Not every single thing is going to be anything in particular. I just got to do what I can do when I can do it. And I appreciate you all for being there every single time. Every time I pop on here, a bunch of y'all show up, and I can't thank you all enough for that, because it really makes it worthwhile. Hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I think I'm gonna go sit in my patio and enjoy some of this rain and thunder out there, because I could use a little nice relaxing. Man, I know, can y'all hear that? That's some loud thunder right now. Let me see here. Yeah, if you can't hear it, that's too bad, because this is really nice. I'm probably going to fall asleep out there, honestly. Let me see. I think a couple people came in. Gregory Ellison, hello there, my friend. Good to see you. PMD 3360 or 3660. Hello there. This video will be up after the fact, so you'll be able to check out the whole thing. Yeah, Alpha King says chaos can be relaxing sometimes. By the way, Alpha King is in the chat. He and I had a conversation yesterday morning. I woke up extra early to do an interview, and it was super interesting. And that's exclusive for the podcast. Y'all are going to see that on the podcast. And yeah, love you guys. Thanks for coming out. Very much appreciated, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your week, your weekend. Be safe. Do the best you can, especially if you're going to rock the Dreamer apparel. And even without the Dreamer apparel, you still have the power to change people's lives and to influence people in good ways and help people. And that's what I want. That's what I want you all to do. Daryl, hello there, my friend. All right, we need a code word. For those who listen all the way, for those who listen all the way to the end of this video, code word. Let's get some code word, guys. Let's get a code word. Code word thunder. There you go. Yep, that's a good one. All right, so if you're listening to this, type in the code word thunder. Work it into your comment in your comment section down below so that I can see you. And sheep, that's a good one too. All right, double code word. Thunder and sheep. The words thunder and sheep have to be in your comment. And that's how I'll know who is a true ride or die dreamer and listened all the way to the end. That was a loud thunder strike. Lightning strike. If you want me to know that you listened all the way to the end, type in thunder and sheep. All right, y'all. Take it easy. Enjoy whatever moments of precious time that you have. Not that you're going to die or anything anytime soon, but I wish you all the best. And I hope that y'all have a great rest of your weekend. Be safe and take care. Until next time, my friends, I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. Love you guys.